Intervention in Syria if it's going to protect civilians. There's been a question about the commitment of Islamists to democracy. There was a question about whether or not Iran is a dictatorship and what kind of dictatorship it is. And then there was a question about what scope there is in the Arab Revolution for creating economic integration in a new form across the region. So I'd like to start with Andrew. Could you come back on one or all of those points in less than 2 minutes?
I'm only going to address the questions about Syria. The others questions, clearly there's others on the panel who can better address those. And first of all, let me say I don't think anyone here doubts the right of the Syrian people, as people anywhere else, to rise against the regime, the dictatorial regime. My own view is that a regime that can only survive by killing its people in industrial numbers will not survive over the long term and will not deserve to survive over the long term. But as you have the right, any Syrian, to take that view or a different one of their own regime, we have the right, and I go further, the obligation to oppose the policies of our own government, which have, and this then is the question, could they protect civilians? That is not what has happened in Iraq, where the Iraqi people were promised that intervention would lead to a better life for them. Nearly 1 million, certainly hundreds of thousands have died, and 4 million are internal or external exile. It was the same rhetoric in Libya, where it was a mission exclusively to protect civilians, and at least 30,000 civilians have died as a result. Of course, the question as to how many might have died had events taken their course in Libya is unknowable, but what is certain is that the government imposed, the NATO government, the Cameron-Sarkozy government in Libya, is a dysfunctional parody of democracy. So we're not discussing an abstract question. What we do know, and George is of course completely right in his analysis of the history, is that there has not been a single positive intervention by the British, French, or for that matter American governments in the Middle East over the last 100 years. And any intervention in Syria, under whatever pretext it is presented, would, in the view of the Stop the War Coalition, certainly lead to far greater tragedies than we are now seeing in Syria, tragic as those events certainly are. So it is not a lack of sympathy with those suffering in Syria that impels us to this position. It is the conviction sustained by the last 10 years of history, most graphically, and the last 100 if one studies it, that Western intervention in the Middle East, no good can come of it, no good will come of it, and that is why we, I think, are right to continue to oppose it.
There were 4 points which I raised, I don't know if you remember them: Iran, democracy and Islamism, intervention in Syria, and the wider question of economic integration. I don't know whether you'd like to come back on any or all of those, briefly.
I can, but if you allow Brother George to do that at first, I can comment.
Okay, Brother George.
It's the one man in the world I can't defy.
Oh, no, thank you.
The brother who was a Ba'athist in Bashar al-Assad's party until Bashar started killing his people, good timing for your resignation, was, I think, unfair in describing me as having devoted 2 sentences to Syria. I did rather more than that, but the meeting's not about Syria. The meeting's about Egypt and the meaning of the Egyptian revolution in the broader Arab world. It's perfectly open to anybody here, Syrian or otherwise, to organize their own meeting exclusively about Syria, when all of the meeting can be devoted to that. I agreed with every word that Andrew said, and would only add this, that the invasion, the British and American invasion of Iraq, was, as part of its deliberate policy, an attempt to sectarianize politics in Iraq for the permanent division of the country as a matter of deliberate policy the better to control it. That hasn't worked out all that well, because as any schoolboy could have told them, if you destroy Iraq, you'll make Iran very much more powerful. And that will have its consequences when you start to make moves towards a war with Iran. But that was their policy. It's their only hope in Iraq. Anybody who thinks that the West doesn't like Shiites, they loved the Shiite government in Iraq. They loved the Shah when he was a Shiite, presumably. They just want Shiites that will do what they're told by the Western powers. We reject this kind of sectarian division because we see it as a Sykes-Picot too. But I'm not sure that everyone in the Syrian revolution rejects that sectarianism. I'm not sure of that at all. Now, the prospect of my country bombing your country is not one I'm prepared to countenance. I'm sorry. Not in any circumstances will I support my country bombing your country. And that's what they mean by intervention. When they talk about no-fly zones, why Russia and China vetoed the resolution last week is because they saw that the no-fly zone in Libya was actually a free fire zone. Except all the fire,
Russia has its
Hang on, you can come back and say
all the fire was going one way. It wasn't a no-fly zone. Humanitarian corridors will turn out to be military corridors. For the re-invasion, I stress this point, the re-invasion by Crusader powers of Syria. Now, every Syrian I've ever known has been proud to tell me that they were the heartland of Arabism. They were the heartland of the Arab resistance to foreign and colonial rule. Going back, where is Salah ad-Din buried? In Damascus. It's as clear in the Syrian psyche and character as that. So don't ask me to support the new Crusaders to invade your country. I will never do it. That doesn't mean I support Bashar. Not actually ever. Not just since he started, quote-unquote, killing his people. I have a house called Tel Azatar, which is called after a Palestinian refugee camp that was flattened and massacred by the father of Bashar al-Assad. I'm under no doubt of the nature of the Assad regime. I just won't support an imperial invasion of Syria, however compelling a case you make. I'm sorry.
George, thanks.
Regarding Syria, I would say that the West is not a charitable organization.
We know that.
And what they did in Libya and trying to do should be considered if we talk to them about Syria. Secondly, the young lady here, she's a good Muslim as far as I see, and we have fiqhi questions when you are able to revolt against the dictator or the ruler. It's not anyone should come out and then the casualties will be as big as we see in Syria now. This is a fiqhi question that should be answered properly in another forum. I'm not against the revolution, but I support the revolution in Syria after it came to that stage. But if I was asked, how can you revolt against someone, I should say we have to prepare ourselves to make casualties as low as possible. And this, as I said, is a Sharia, matter of Sharia, of law in Islam, and then we have to abide by that, and ulama can discuss such matter. Islam and democracy, or Islamic forces and democracy. I'm not afraid about democracy from Islam and Islamic forces. but I'm afraid about Islamic forces from Western democracy, as it happened in Palestine. I will not remind you of the government that was established by Abu al-Abd in Palestine and what happened after that. The liberals and secularists, many of them are my friends. We eat with each other, love each other, talk to each other, but they were unhappy, and some of them were against the results when they brought Islamists to the parliament. This is the will of the people. And I was telling them, Islamists are there, let us talk to the people and change that situation if they misbehave or make any mischief. This is the will of the people that we should go to. Regarding economy in Egypt and integration, unity and integration, I heard Najmuddin Arbikan, our dear late friend of Turkey, many years. I used to befriend him since 1976, and to make some sort of coordination between the Islamic movement. I was the Secretary General of the Council for Coordination among the Islamic movements in the 80s and 90s as well. So I heard him working on that project long time ago, attracting the attention of the Islamic movement and the Arab world and non-Arabs who are Islamists to work together and cooperation among different, for example, universities, for example, economy, and the Big Eight as well. He was the father of the big Islamic 8 countries. So the project is there, we are working on that. And one of the slogans now I bring in Tahrir Square, instead of the Egyptians are saying, الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام, which is I am asking them to say, maybe after 5 years or so.